Aloha, everybody, and welcome to the Jason Jones Show. I am your host, Jason Jones, broadcasting from the beautiful hill country of Texas. And there is no place on earth more fun than the hill country of Texas in the summer. And I'm taking a little summer break, a little summer vacation. What does that mean? I mean, I'm still working at least 8 hours a day. It just means I'm not going to shave, and I'm wearing a hat that says summer fun. And this week, instead of recording a show, we're going to do something very special for you. A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed the great John Kiriakou, CIA officer, whistleblower, went to prison because of his integrity. And it was a privilege to interview him. And if you haven't listened to that show, well, listen to that show first. But today, at the end of the show, we did Q&A. The audience was mostly Gen Z, and I worked very hard to come up with brilliant, thought-provoking questions that nobody ever asked. Thought I did a good job. And then these young people got to the mic and they began to ask questions. And I'm like, wow, those questions are so much better than my questions. And that's what you're going to get to see today. This is the Q&A. It's over an hour long of young people asking John Kiriakou questions. Now, we're going to talk about aliens. We're going to talk about the Kennedy assassination. It's going to be wide-ranging. And if you don't know this about John, in early February, he went viral. And in the months since, he's become literally the hero of Gen Z, not just in the United States, but around the world. Billions and billions of views on videos of John talking about everything from being a spy to his faith to food. And so today you're going to get to hear Gen Z kids ask their hero, John Kiriakou, really interesting questions. And so that's today's show. Now, before we get to the show, this episode, as always, is being brought to you by the Vulnerable People Project, standing in solidarity with the most vulnerable people in the world when the world is left. Now, what does that really mean, Jason? What are you doing? We're delivering emergency meals in the Nuba Mountains where there's a famine of Sudan. We are throwing a summer Bible program, a Christian camp in the West Bank for the Christian community in Taiba, the last 100% Christian village in the West Bank. In Nigeria, we've rapidly expanding our security of parishes. We're up to 64 parishes, and actually we're securing the last Jewish community in Nigeria and helping them with the summer program as well for their youth. Our work in India continues, in China it continues, in Central Asia it continues. Go to our website, vulnerablepeopleproject.com, look around, look at the work we do, and I need to ask you a favor. Become a monthly donor. It is our monthly donors that give me the confidence to continue to grow our work, because I know that tomorrow, next month, and next year, we'll be able to continue the support. It can be $5. We have monthly donors that give us $2 and monthly donors that give us $2,000. And I'm grateful to each and every one of them, because it's the monthly donors that give us the courage to grow and maintain our program serving the vulnerable church, the vulnerable communities. All right, so vulnerablepeopleproject.com. Now on to a Q&A session with Gen Z and the great John Kiriakou. All right, on with the interview.
Hey, John, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask about, have you heard about the string of like NASA scientists that went missing recently? I just wanted to know if you had done any, I don't know, your own research or had heard anything about that.
I've tried. You know, other than what was initially reported in the mainstream media, there's not a ton out there. I was heartened to see that the FBI is actually taking it seriously. You know, I guess it could be a coincidence, but, you know, I mentioned earlier to someone that I'm the least conspiratorial person that I know. I really am. But I feel like I've been burned repeatedly in the last 6-8 years, where things that we believed were conspiracies or conspiracy theories turned out to be true. Just look at the COVID lab leak, for example. We were all supposed to believe that you had to be an extremist or a nut to believe that it was a lab leak, and then it's a lab leak. So I'm not sure I believe in coincidences anymore. I hope that the FBI is serious about investigating this. I'm not sure what the connection is yet between the scientists, but for 14 people to go missing, all having something to do with space or the hard sciences, Come on. There's got to be something behind it. I'm only disappointed that we haven't seen more released to the media.
Great question.
Yeah, crazy, isn't it?
Hey, how are you? My question's about chemtrails.
Yeah.
With the 28 states, it says between 28 and 32 states have put into legislation to get rid of weather modification. Florida, Tennessee were the first two states to officially put it through. Should we be nervous about these chemtrails?
No. I've never believed that there is such a thing as chemtrails. I think that people conflate chemtrails with cloud seeding. Cloud seeding's been around since the 70s, really. And we don't really know the depth to which the federal government has experimented in cloud seeding. We know that it's been going on for decades. But chemtrails, people believe, are coming directly from, the jets, the passenger jets and such that we see leaving vapor trails across the sky. I think they're two vastly different things. I really believe that what we see from passenger jets is water vapor. But chemtrails, I think, is probably cloud seeding.
Do you mind me if I ask another one?
Please.
With you witnessing in the CIA that they were able to shoot chemicals into the air and get people sick, do you not think that would be an easy way to get a lot of us sick really fast?
Yes, I do. And that's why we need this robust congressional oversight, because you can't trust them. Just because they say, oh, we're the CIA, if you knew what we know, if you had the clearances we have, you're going to have to trust us and take our word for it. I know you guys. You lie about everything. So I can't trust you. That's why we need this robust federal oversight that we just don't have. But yeah, you're exactly right. We need members of Congress who are willing to stand up. Like, whatever happened to the likes of Mike Gravel and Frank Church and Barry Goldwater and, people who actually stood up and said, wait a minute, you can't do this stuff. And you have to answer to us. Now we're like, guys waving little flags. They've got the Israeli flag in front of their offices, and they're all jockeying to be the next CIA director. That's not congressional oversight. It's pandering.
But I don't know. Is there a big group of you guys want to ask? Wait. You're okay. My last question. I've been seeing a lot of videos, I'm sure a lot of people here have as well, in Florida, with people being visited by the police for making posts against Israel. Is that real?
Yes. I happened to be in Miami when the first police door knock took place.
So it's real?
It's real. Oh, listen to how bad it is. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, pushed legislation through the Florida legislature this year, making it a criminal offense to criticize Israel. Patently unconstitutional. There's not even room for debate. It's unconstitutional. And so while I happen to be in Miami, a woman in Miami Beach posted on Facebook, Free Palestine. And next thing you know, Miami Beach police, did you put this on Facebook? She said, yes, arrest me. Yeah.
That's U.S. policy, by the way. Two-state solution is her official position. She's just stating our position as a country.
You're exactly right. So not only did Ron DeSantis push this through the Florida legislature, he actually didn't sign it as soon as it was passed. Instead, he took it, he flew to Israel, he signed it in the presence of Benjamin Netanyahu, and gave him the pen as a souvenir. So does he work for the people of Florida, or does he work for Benjamin Netanyahu?
That's scary.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, so the things we're seeing are true.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have a friend. There are 32 states in the country that have anti-BDS legislation, boycott, divest, and sanction. So I have a friend who got hired to give a speech at Georgia State University. No big deal. And she goes, they send her in advance the contract, we're going to give you $500 to do the speech, and you have to pledge allegiance to Israel. She's like, what are you talking about? I have to pledge allegiance to, I'm not going to pledge allegiance to Israel. I don't have allegiance to Israel. Well, you can't be a contractor in the state of Georgia, and giving the speech and taking state money would make her a contractor unless you pledge fealty to Israel. And she said, no, and they canceled her speech. So she sued. And she lost. She lost in the Supreme Court of Georgia. And it's not good at all. I just learned this week that in addition to the billions of dollars that we give to Israel in American taxpayers' money, the states all give money to Israel as well. It's a line item in the budgets of all 50 states.
Didn't Trump also tell them all that they need to continue giving them money? And if they don't, he's not going to support their state?
That's exactly right. And he threatened to cut off highway funds.
John, it's worse, even cities and counties.
This is insane.
San Marcos, they found out in Texas, was sending millions of dollars, this county, to Israel.
It's not believable.
This is insane. It can't be legal, but I think nobody's challenged it. Yeah, and if you do challenge it, of course, you're a notorious anti-Semite. So
that's all.
There you go.
Hi, Jason. Hi, John. Thank you for the podcast. It was great. This is kind of a selfish question. So my name is Victor. I'm Ukrainian Catholic, and so we use the Byzantine Rite as well. And I was wondering if you ever think the Divine Liturgy is going to be celebrated in Hagia Sophia, like ever again.
You should have been here yesterday. I was wearing a T-shirt that said "Free Constantinople." I found it on eBay. I wear it all the time just to provoke people. What a wonderful question. Well, it's been almost 600 years. Call me a fool, but I think that someday, yes, someday it's going to happen. Yes. I have to believe that it's going to happen. Yeah. I mean, to believe otherwise it would feel like a denial of my faith. You know? In 1453, what was it, May 29th, 1453? I think it was the 29th, 1453. In the midst of Divine Liturgy in the Hagia Sophia Cathedral, Ottoman forces finally broke through the door. They killed the emperor, and the legend is that the priest vanished. He just disappeared into the air, and that when Constantinople is liberated and Hagia Sophia is free, the priest will reappear and complete the Divine Liturgy. I want to believe that that's exactly what's going to happen. Thank you. Yeah, someday.
I just want to add, Slava Ukraini, and I love Ukraine. I spent a lot of time there. But I had the privilege of being on the TV. It's the Game of Thrones of Turkey. It's on the conquest from the Turkish point of view of Constantinople. But I asked the director if I could address the Christian soldiers. This was 2 years ago. I was on set in Turkey. So I asked them to ignore the script and win this time. But unfortunately, they stuck to the script. But it was a real privilege to kind of witness the reenactment of those battles.
Thank you.
Hi, Jason. Hi, John. Thank you so much for the podcast, and thank you for your courage in speaking up about this consistently. I think that this, as someone who's been very passionate about Israeli influence in United States politics for quite some time, it's really encouraging to see the increasing awareness that the American people, and especially the American right, is coming to about this issue. And I think that voices like yours are critical in achieving that. And so my question is this. A couple times you referred to a kind of coming political reckoning, and that's definitely something that I've witnessed just in the kids that I've taught, right, and the guys that I know, right, in my current job at the Wisconsin State Legislature, or my incoming class in law school. And as we kind of anticipate that reckoning, and we're in the midst of that, what do you think, in practical terms, like political organizing and getting on the ground and actually effecting that change, effecting that reckoning, looks like in the kind of short and middle term?
That is one of the toughest questions that I get. My canned answer used to always be, our elected officials work for us. We have to ride them. We have to write to them and email and call and march and speak, and that's all fine and good, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I think the only alternative is we have to take it to the streets. We're not there yet. It's not 1968 yet. But I think we're going to get there because we're approaching this tipping point. You look at the polls, the most recent polls, where where 80% of Gen Zers support Palestinian human rights. 80%. And now 50% of all Republicans. Oh, these are numbers that we've never seen before. I think we're right on the cusp of a major change. We're not sure yet what it's going to look like, but we're coming to something big. And I think what it will look like is that we're going to end up in the streets. I really believe it.
And could I add something? I'd say and flood the institutions. They're so horrified at Gen Z flooding the institutions. There have been countless news stories about the dangerous impact of Gen Z. And then I'd follow that with saying, I have no clue. You guys have a dragon to fight. And from my perspective, I don't know how you fight the dragon of technological change. But from where I am sitting, someone who runs an organization for almost 25 years, serving vulnerable communities facing ethnic cleansing and genocide and war, it's very important, and I'm so excited to see the return of Gen Z to the Catholic Church. For the first time in American history, there are more Catholics under 18 than Protestants. A former intern of mine called me and asked me if I would be her sponsor. She's entering the Catholic Church. She's in medical school at Liberty. And I said, how are your classmates taking? And she said, about 50% of my friends at Liberty are discerning whether to become Catholic or Orthodox. So I would say ground your political activism in your faith, in the Christian understanding of the human person. And what is our vocation? It's to love God and love for his sake, and to love our neighbor for the sake of God. The real challenge to your generation is, do not be swept away by enthusiasms of hatred and bigotry, not to Muslims, not to Jews. We are one people, we are one country. We have foreign governments fomenting anti-Islamic hate in this country. This is repulsive. Fomenting Jew hatred is repulsive. St. Maximilian Kolbe, and you can order the complete translated collection of his writings on Kindle right now. To get the bound books, it's like $2,000, but on Kindle you can get it for $60. He wrote a lot about Zionism and Zionism's impact on Europe in the 20s and 30s. He wrote prolifically on this, but he always grounded his response in love, in conversion, and charity. And so that would be my warning to your generation. You are aggrieved. You have been brutalized and abandoned. But I don't blame us. No one is prepared. We weren't prepared for the apps. We weren't, my pornography was the Sears catalog, right? Yeah. The underwear section, 3 pages, right? That was it. And maybe someone found a Playboy in their uncle's garage, and then how that was like the whole neighborhood was riding their Huffy bikes to that house. Your generation has been brutalized. Your moral imagination has been brutalized. Your dreams appear to be erased, but they're not. Like you said, grab that bull by the horns. G.K. Chesterton said, a dragon is no longer scary when you look it in the eyes. And so there's the dragons lurking. Just look them in the eyes. Be grounded in your faith. Treat people with respect and dignity. As a man, never say something that would scare a child. Never about their ethnicity, never about their religion, never about their race. It's not campy or cute. It goes against our faith. And so that would be the warning I would give to your generation. But I'm also extremely hopeful. Like I say, your generation gives me hope because you love Theo Von, Tim Dillon, and John Kiriakou. 3 totally different guys that are beautiful. And that's who your generation adores. And so that's what gives me hope.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate that fighting the dragon analogy. And I really think that the first dragon to be fought is the dragon of disillusionment, right? And I think so just voices that are hopeful and encouraging are just so important right now. And so again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this. Thanks for speaking to us. Real quick, you've been well-traveled and in the midst of military conflicts. Did you ever see any mysterious craft, since UFOs are pretty relevant right now?
Craft? Like craft?
UAPs.
Well.
Uh-oh.
Well, no, listen, when I was a senior in high school, my mom and dad bought a restaurant in the neighboring town. I don't know what it is about Greeks and diners. It's just this thing. My dad didn't know anything about the restaurant business, and all of his life he wanted a restaurant. So he and my mom buy this diner in Sharon, Pennsylvania. And my dad and I always worked the midnight shift together on Fridays and Saturday nights, 11 to 7. So we would leave home at 10. It was only a 20-minute drive, but we lived in Amish country, and so it's very, very dark, right? So we get on State Route 60, going through Amish country, one Friday night, 10:15, and we see this brilliant flash of white light, like blinding white light. And it's about, 12 or 1,500 feet off the ground. And we both look up in the sky, and there's a second flash, and then a third flash. I mean, it's like the sun. It's so blinding. And then this orange saucer just lights up, and it's just hovering there. And I said, what in the world is that? My dad pulls the car over. We get out of the car. We're standing there staring at this thing. It's not making any sound at all. A guy pulls up behind us. He gets out of his car. He says, what is that? And my dad says, I don't know. And then it just goes at this fantastic speed that defies the laws of physics. So we're standing there like, is it going to come back? Or what just happened? Finally, maybe a minute passes. We get back in the car. We start driving to the restaurant. And because I was just a kid, I said to my dad, so should we call somebody? Should we call the cops or something? And he says, and say what? We saw a flying saucer and it flew away? The only person we told was my mom. Okay, a year and a half later, I get to college. I have a cousin who had been an F-15 pilot. And I always looked up to this cousin. He was like 10 years older than I, more than 10, 15 years older than I. And I don't know how we got onto the subject, but I said to him, I saw the craziest thing a year and a half ago, my dad and I told him the story. He says, we used to see those things all the time. He said, there are hundreds of them off the coast of Norfolk, Virginia. He said, every pilot in Norfolk saw something. And I said, well, what would you do? He said, we fill out a classified form, we send it to the Pentagon, and nobody ever said anything again. He said, sometimes we would see them come up out of the ocean. He said, we don't know what they are, but everybody has seen them. So I don't know what the heck it was. I saw something that night, and it was glowing bright orange, and it was in the shape of a saucer, and then it flew away at a speed that I can't even describe to you. I don't know what it was.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? So this is the week of Steven Spielberg. Is this week Steven Spielberg's Disclosure? By the way, it looks like an amazing movie, but it looks more like Possession. It reminds me actually of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh,
because those were
another great movie.
Right? Those were aliens, but they kind of
Pods,
came into our bodies. And it kind of seems that's what, from the trailer, Disclosure Day, it kind of looks like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So everyone's talking about, are we being prepared for disclosure? 2027 is the year of disclosure.
Right. Or what they called in True Blood, the Great Revelation.
Which sounds to me like it's out of the book of Revelations. But would it be CIA that's responsible for protecting these secrets, or would it be another government agency?
No. My very first day at the CIA, my new boss took me to lunch, and I said, I got to ask you. I said, where are the aliens? And he laughed and he said, that is the first question that every one of us asks when we get here. He said, we don't have anything to do with that stuff. All of it's at the Pentagon.
The next time I see Tulsi, I want to be like, I just want to go aliens, and then see the look on her face. But she wouldn't know, is what you're saying. Or would she? Odie and I know?
Probably not. I mean, listen, Tulsi, you know my feelings about Tulsi.
Yeah.
I think she was awesome, is awesome. But really the DNI just manages the intelligence community's budget.
And they were probably
That's pretty much it.
blocking her at every turn.
They'd cut her out. Yeah, they fought her from the very beginning. They were worried about her.
So I'm not going to get any
that she would actually try to reform things.
Okay.
Yeah,
Real quick, did you ever have any crossover with Pete Blaber at Delta Force?
No, I sure didn't. Sorry.
Hi, guys. Thank you for the talk. Very fruitful conversation. This might be kind of a dark question, but what do you know about frazzle drip and other instances of government ritual sacrifice? Are they just conspiracy theories, or is there an element of truth to these?
Honestly, only what I've read in the press. There was an investigation, an actual investigation in the late 80s, because there was a relatively senior officer at NSA who came out as a member of the Church of Satan. And he was accused of having engaged in ritual sacrifice. And so the FBI and the Defense Department did an investigation, and they couldn't find any evidence of it. I think it's probably an urban myth, because they've never been able to actually prove any of the allegations that have been made. But again, like I say, we're lied to so routinely that I don't want to say definitively, like, no, of course not, that's ridiculous. I haven't seen anything, but I don't know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
How's it going? Thank you for the conversation. How much do you know about Epstein being a CIA asset?
Oh, that's a good question. So I was on record from early on saying that I believed that Epstein was an Israeli access agent. An access agent, well, if you're a foreign intelligence service and you want intelligence from the highest levels, you want intelligence from a former president, from the sixth in line to the British throne, from the founder of the biggest company in the world, you're not going to recruit that person. It's not possible. They're not recruitable. So you do the next best thing. You recruit somebody who can get right up against them and report back to you what they're saying, especially if you can get them into a compromising position. And so I believe that the Israelis were able to utilize Jeffrey Epstein to get close to Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew and Bill Gates and all these other people that we've heard about. Get them into compromising positions, because otherwise, why would you put cameras and listening devices in the bathrooms in addition to every other room in the house? Normal people don't do things like that. Alan Dershowitz and I went WWE SmackDown on each other on the Piers Morgan show on this issue. And I stand by every single word I said. I believe that he was working primarily for the Mossad. However, in the last release, the 3.5 million pages that we have seen most recently, it was crystal clear that he was also volunteering to the CIA, to the FBI, to the British MI5 and MI6, to the Germans, and he tried repeatedly to volunteer to the Russians. He asked on 4 different occasions for a one-on-one meeting with Vladimir Putin. The SVR would not allow him to meet privately with Putin. They countered several times with a proposal to meet with Putin and 2 security officials, and it was Epstein that said no. So I've come to the conclusion that, yes, he was an Israeli access agent, but he was also what we call an intelligence peddler, where he'll pick up intelligence from different places or different people and then pass it to other intelligence services to kind of bank the goodwill. It ended up not really working out very well for him. But I think that's what we saw. I talked to his brother a couple of weeks ago, and his brother said he's dead. The brother took the body to the crematorium and actually pressed the button that burned him up. The brother says the question is, was he murdered? And who knows? I'm biased because of my own time in prison. People are like, well, my God, the guards didn't make their rounds. No, because they never make their rounds, because they're stupid and lazy and they're sleeping in the guard booth. It wasn't a conspiracy. You put these 2 morons on the unit, and they're both, like this in the guard booth. And they're like, oh, my God, it's a conspiracy. They didn't make the rounds. No. Oh, my God, the cameras weren't working. Newsflash, none of the cameras are working anywhere. This is the curse of the Bureau of Prisons. Oh, they put him in with a murderer. Yeah, because they're stupid, and they do things like that. So was he murdered? Maybe he was. I doubt it. But maybe he was. either way, we'll probably never know.
Do you think Charlie Kirk was killed by the Mossad because he was turning on Israel and was against the war with Iran?
I will say there are some very strange things that surrounded the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I know a lot of people who were very personally close to Charlie, and none of them believe what we have been told as the official story so far. None of them. And these are people whom I respect deeply. And you have to ask yourself, why would Benjamin Netanyahu come out and say, we didn't do it? Well, nobody accused you of doing it. What are you talking about? What do you mean you didn't do it? Why would you say something like that? We're going to put up a statue of Charlie Kirk in Tel Aviv. Why? Why would you do that when he had just come out against Israel? So, methinks thou doth protest too much. I mentioned earlier on a podcast, I did a podcast earlier today, and I said, another thing that bothers me very much is why in the world is the FBI involved in this investigation? Charlie Kirk was killed in Utah. The shooter came from Utah. The crime was planned in Utah. After he allegedly did the crime, he went back to his home in Utah, confessed to his friends in Utah, confessed to his dad in Utah. Okay, so where's the Utah State Police and the Utah Attorney General's office? Why in the world is the FBI involved? Are they covering something up? Are they trying to hijack the investigation? And why haven't we heard anything? Like, we've heard literally nothing about the direction of this investigation. Why? I don't get it. But then it reminds me too of Butler. What, did Butler just never happen? Are we supposed to not be asking questions about what happened and why did it happen in Butler, Pennsylvania? It's the same thing. It's like, why this rush to silence? This rush to what appears to me to be cover-up? Who are we protecting? So, like I said, I'm normally the least conspiratorial guy out there, but I'm having to reassess my position on these issues because everybody's lying. It's been my experience that everybody's lying. One of the first things I said on one of my first appearances on Tucker Carlson's show when he was still on Fox is I've had to learn the hard way that everybody is lying. The CIA told us there's no torture program. That was a lie. The CIA told us there's no kidnapping and rendition program. That's a lie. The CIA said there's no secret archipelago of prisons around the world. That's a lie. Everything they tell us is a lie. And then they come out and they say, well, no, we're telling you the truth about this. We're telling you the truth. Why would we believe you when literally everything else that you have said has been a lie? So I think we shouldn't reserve judgment on any of these things because it very well may be a conspiracy. Yes.
All right, this question's for both you guys. Is it true, or do you guys know anything about the fact that 240 journalists were supposedly killed in Gaza over a course of 60 to 90 days?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, and it's true. It's one of the most horrible statistics that's out there, and it's more than all of the journalists killed in all of the other countries of the world combined. Since World War I. No, this is unprecedented. The world's never seen a scale of killing of journalists like we've seen in Israel.
How do you think they're able to hide it so well and us not see these videos?
Oh, I've got a friend. Oh my gosh. The Israelis have this very heavy, onerous military censorship law. I've got a friend who, he's an American citizen. He's a blogger, and he was doing some photography for the Guardian newspaper in the UK. So he's in the West Bank, and he takes a picture of a crater where an Iranian missile had landed, and then just sent it to the Guardian. And he's immediately arrested by the Israelis for violating the censorship law. So they said they were charging him with espionage. and this is a death penalty case. He's like, I'm an American citizen. He's Jewish on top of it. He said, I'm a journalist. And they said, you might be able to negotiate 20 years in prison. So he said he's freaking out. He's crying every day. He was in jail 2 or 3, he was in jail 2 or 3 weeks. And they finally expelled him from Israel, told him he can never come back. But it's this crazy heavy military censorship. They can deem anything they want as a national security secret. It could be, a picture of a hole in the ground from some missile or some drone. It can be a building. It can be anything they want it to be. And they'll shoot you and call it, self-defense in the national defense. And what are you going to do about it? And here in the United States, we just accept it. Whether it's Congress or the State Department, the White House, the mainstream media, we just take it. Whatever the Israelis' rules are, we just adapt them or adapt to them as our own.
And I want to add to that. There's an AI targeting program called Lavender. And Lavender sucks up everything about people in a given area. And so I think that Lavender potentially could be behind the intentional targeting of journalists. So to me, this is the best case scenario, actually, so that maybe the IDF officers aren't targeting journalists. Maybe Lavender is putting them on a targeting list because they're sucking up their news reports, and their news reports are critical of Israel for killing children. There was one woman, she was constantly documenting the killing of infants and children. She gives birth to her child. She's in her apartment. Her husband goes to get the birth certificate, and a rocket goes right through her window into her apartment, killing her with her baby as she's breastfeeding. It makes me think of something the great Catholic anthropologist Rene Girard said: to become in solidarity with the vulnerable is to become indistinguishable from those you serve. So here was a Palestinian woman documenting the killing of children and women and babies and infants, and she dies breastfeeding her child. So yeah, this is happening. It's real. And I think we've been so formed, we're so bigoted towards West Bank. Today, or this week, 4 Palestinians were kidnapped out of their dorms by the IDF, including an American citizen and a Christian girl. We're just, because they're probably all dangerous, bad people. So we just look away. I think we have been so prepared to ignore these crimes, because I can't imagine if Hamas shot a Jewish infant in the face today, that would be ignored. Or if Hamas raided a college dormitory and kidnapped 4 Jewish students, we'd ignore it. Well, it's because I wrote an article after, I think I mentioned this earlier, after my first trip to Egypt as we were evacuating Christians from Gaza. I hope I'm an anti-Palestinian bigot, where I actually detailed how my bigotry has been formed over a lifetime and how it took actually meeting the people of Gaza and the West Bank for me to even come to grips with how I had such deeply held prejudice against the Palestinian people. So I think a lot of it has to do with prejudice.
Yeah, it's crazy. It feels like with them introducing AI at the same time of all this and all of the nasty things that we're able to see on Instagram and Facebook now, where before it was super censored, it really feels like they're desensitizing our generation in a massive way so that we're not focused on all these nasty things going on in these other countries.
It's possible.
Yeah. Sorry, I answered a question to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just had a question, it's related to the Venezuela when we took Maduro. So I'm sure probably like a week after the report came out of like the Venezuelan soldiers were reporting like a new weapon that we were using.
Yeah.
And it was like causing, headaches or whatever, discombobulation.
Right.
So just kind of using that sort of like an example, during your time in the CIA, were there any sort of either bioweapons or sonic weapons that kind of made deaths look like, a heart attack or an accident?
Oh, the CIA has been working on weapons like that for decades. They work very closely. The Directorate of Science and Technology works very closely with DARPA to develop these advanced weapons. But I'll tell you, in the 90s, when Bill Clinton was president, somebody I don't know, in the CIA General Counsel's office, the White House Office of the General Counsel, I don't know. Somebody said, wait a minute. These are violations of international law. As odd as this sounds, international law says that on the battlefield, you can shoot somebody and kill him, but you can't beam a weapon at him. It's illegal. Like you can't, we were developing this weapon, it was a laser that would blind soldiers on the battlefield. That way you don't have to kill them. But it's illegal to blind them. You have to kill them or you have to change the law. And so they just backed off on the development of the weapon. But now you hear about Havana syndrome all the time, right? It's easy to dismiss Havana syndrome as the complaints of a crank. And I'll tell you, right when I got out of prison, I was hired by the American Psychological Association, the APA, to help them write a list of rules by which APA member psychologists could conduct national security interrogations. It was called the Brookline Protocols. And I was the only one of 13 who was not a psychologist. So we're all going to lunch together one day, and I said, guys, I have a question. Literally every single day, I get at least one email from somebody who says the CIA is beaming waves at their head, or communicating with them through a filling in their tooth, or put a chip in their brain while they were sleeping. And they started laughing. I said, how do I respond to these people? And one of them said, this is an entry-level form of mental illness. Sometimes when people feel overwhelmed just with life, their brain defaults to a point where it needs to blame someone for their problems. And the easiest person or organization to blame is a secret one. It's one that you don't understand. And so people believe that the CIA is targeting them. It's usually not, but they believe it is because they're experiencing the stress that they can't understand or cope with. I said, okay, that makes sense to me. Then I started seeing reports of this Havana syndrome. And I thought, oh, it's that default to the CIA beaming waves at your head. Until Mark Polymeropoulos came out. Mark Polymeropoulos is a friend of mine. We got hired together. And we're both Greeks, and we used to, talk about how great it was to be Greek. And he went into operations a couple of years before I did. He rose up through the ranks and became the station chief in Moscow.
Wow.
Right? He's a serious guy. Senior level positions all around the world. And he came out, he retired, said he had this Havana syndrome, got an MRI, and shows a traumatic brain injury. Well, if Mark Polymeropoulos says Havana syndrome is real, it's real. Because he's as serious a guy as I know at the CIA. Is it the CIA's weapon, the Russians, the Chinese, the Israelis? I don't have any idea. But it's out there, and it's being used.
Yeah, so I'm sure you've seen, recently there's a guy on Fox News who got caught wearing a mask. I was wondering about, how sophisticated and realistic the CIA disguises are.
Oh, that's a great question. I saw that. Incredible.
Is that real?
Do you know what he's talking about?
I didn't know if that was real or not. That was real? That was a mask?
On another show, and it was the same guy.
It was the same guy. I don't know if that was real. It looked like right here, it looked like a mask.
Yeah.
But that's not how CIA masks are made. They're made more like prosthetics. You know what I mean? So it would have been glued. It wouldn't have been a mask that you pull on like you could buy on Amazon, even the expensive ones. It would have been glued like a prosthetic, and it would have gone all the way down to his mid-chest. So that made me think that it wasn't real, or maybe there was some AI stuff going on. But with that said, my very first day at the CIA, I've said that half a dozen times so far today. I'm sitting next to a guy on my left, a woman on my right. And we're all so happy. It's our first day at the CIA. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm John. Nice to meet you. I said, where'd you guys go to school? This guy went to college. I said, what'd they hire you to do? He said, well, they hired me because I was the school cartoonist in the newspaper, right? They hired him to be a master forger. and they trained him to be a master forger. He and I did an operation together. I'm going to say 10 years later. You'd never know that this was a forgery. It was incredible. The woman had just finished a certificate at the Falls Church, Virginia School of Beauty. Seriously. And she became a master disguise maker. I did an operation with her a decade later in which she came out to my station 6 weeks in advance, and she said, we're going to do an experiment with you. We're going to make the first ever bald head with a comb over disguise. She put those hairs in one hair at a time. And it took the whole 6 weeks. She worked for days to get the color of the bald head exactly the same as the color of my skin. We finally went in to the station chief's office. And he's like, I can't believe it. I can't believe what a perfect disguise it is. He said, we've got to fool the ambassador. So the only seam was right here at the bridge of my nose. But I didn't wear glasses at the time. So I put on glasses that had just clear frames. And we walked into the ambassador's office, and the station chief says, Ambassador, I want to introduce you to one of our experts from Washington. He's here to talk about the Middle East. I worked with the ambassador every single day for 18 months. And he gets up and he says, hi, it's so nice to meet you. Welcome to Athens. And I said, thank you. It's nice to meet you too. And then he's kind of smiling like, okay. And I went like this, and I pulled the head off. And he goes, oh my God. I said, it's great, right? And he said, you people. I don't even know what to say. So there are great masks.
And that was a long time ago.
Oh, I get a better story. That was 26 years ago.
Yeah.
Getting back to the idea of a one that comes all the way down to the chest and is glued down. I parked my car one morning in the parking lot at CIA headquarters, and I'm walking toward the building, and there's this guy walking toward me, 7 o'clock in the morning, and he's staring at me. And I remember thinking, God, these gay guys are always coming on to me. Right? Because the guy's like looking at my body, looking at me. So I stop and I was like, what? And he's like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to stare at you, but I'm involved in a covert action program and I can't tell you about it, but I really need to see you in room, 1B035 tomorrow at 6:30 in the morning. And I said, are you kidding me? He says, no, please, take my word for it. I was intrigued. So the next day, I go at 6:30 in the morning. They make me sign a secrecy agreement. I said, what's up? He says, I didn't mean to stare at you like that yesterday, but you are exactly the same height, weight, and body shape as this world leader that we're going after. And we might need to work with you on this covert action program. I said, okay. I said, I can't. I'm leaving for Greece day after tomorrow. I'm going PCS, permanent change of station, to Greece. He's like, we'll be in touch. I forgot about it. 6 months later, the station chief comes in. He says, you're being summoned home for something that's so highly classified, I'm not allowed to know about it. And I said, oh, it's this guy that I ran into in the parking lot. It's no big deal. He said, well, they're insisting that you go. So I come back. They hired 2 Emmy Award-winning Hollywood makeup artists to create the mask. And when they were done, it took 6 hours every day for me to put the mask on. I had to sit in this chair for 6 hours every day. And then we would get up, and for the next couple of hours, I would do the thing that I was supposed to do. And when it was all done, and they were able to degrade the film to make it look like it was coming from a foreign country, I was the guy. I got a medal for that. I can't even really tell you what it was.
Yeah.
But the sophistication of the masks 26 years ago made me think that what we saw on Fox the other day was fake.
Because you would never know.
It would be way more sophisticated than than a mask hanging open here at the base of the throat like a costume. That's right.
What about Biden doubles? Body doubles?
You know, the only doubles that I ever knew conclusively were doubles were used by Saddam Hussein. He had a whole bunch of doubles, and his son Uday had doubles. But everybody else is just like, it just doesn't happen in real life. But great.
Hi, I was just wondering, does the CIA pay any mind to like spiritual, supernatural phenomenon? And if so, have they like tried to weaponize that or use that in any way?
That was certainly a part of MK Ultra between 1952 and 1975. But it got so out there, and they weren't able to go to Congress with like concrete evidence that they were able to make inroads into its usage, that they just kind of walked away from it. So in the end, it didn't amount to anything.
So like apart from like MK Ultra, there's like really they don't really pay attention to anything spiritual at all.
Mm-mm.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Do you think the CIA or Mossad played any part or at least had prior knowledge to 9/11?
Oh, that's a great question. You know what? Let me start on July the 6th, 2001. Normal day. That day, I was entertaining a group of mid-level Middle Eastern intelligence officers. This is something we did every single day. You give them a day of briefings. You take them upstairs to shake hands with the director, get their picture taken. We exchange gifts, and then we take them out to a fancy dinner at the end of the night. That day, I had scheduled a briefing with a junior Al-Qaeda analyst from the Counterterrorism Center at 10 o'clock. So at 10 o'clock, knock on the door. I open the door. It's not the junior 25-year-old Al-Qaeda analyst. It's the director of counterterrorism for the entire CIA, Cofer Black, and the head of operations for the Osama bin Laden unit, a woman we used to call the red-headed devil. She's lucky we were that nice about it, too. So Cofer and the red-headed devil came in, and I was shocked. I stood up. I said, gentlemen, this is Cofer Black. He's the director of the CIA's Counterterrorism Center. Ambassador Black, this is, blah, blah, blah. And he sits down. I had no idea why he was there and why he had preempted this junior analyst. And he starts by saying, something terrible is going to happen. We don't know exactly when or where, but we know it's going to be an attack on an unprecedented scale. We're picking up chatter from the Al-Qaeda training camps. We're hearing camp commanders on the phone with their students, and they're crying and telling them, I'll see you in paradise. We're hearing code words for a massive attack. The honey salesman is coming with vast quantities of honey. There's going to be a huge wedding or a huge soccer game. And he said, I'm begging you, if you have any sources inside Al-Qaeda, please help us. And they just sat there and looked at him. And then he got up, he shook their hands, they walked out. At the end of the day, I sent them back to the hotel. I said, I'll pick you up in 3 hours. We'll go to dinner. But I went back to Cofer's office to thank him. And I said, Cofer, I have to ask you, I don't work on Al-Qaeda day to day. This was, like I say, 2 months before 9/11. I said, did you say that for their benefit, or did you mean it? And he said, oh, I meant it. Something terrible is going to happen. On the morning of September 11th, it's quaint now to say it, but Cofer and I had a meeting with Condoleezza Rice, who was the national security advisor at the time, over the silliest issue. There's a small, almost unknown little government agency called the GPO, the Government Printing Office. And they just print all the reports and books and declassified silliness that comes out of government. They were publishing a book called Foreign Affairs of the United States, Greece, Turkey, Cyprus, 1949 to 1967. And it was just declassified cables. Nobody is ever going to read this book, ever. I'd be surprised if they ever actually printed any copies. But in the 1,200 pages were the names of 3 CIA sources who were still alive. And we have an obscure law in this country that if the government outs a CIA source, the government has to offer the source American citizenship. Well, these guys are all 100 years old. None of them are going to take the American citizenship. So we were meeting with Condi Rice to say, just pull the pages out or black out the names or something. Nobody's ever going to look anyway. So I get a call from the driver saying he was ready to take us to the White House. So I walk up to Cofer's office, and his secretary, her desk was right outside the office. These were the days before you could watch TV on your computer. So she had a little tiny TV on her desk, and one of the buildings, one of the towers of the World Trade Center was burning. I said, what happened to the World Trade Center? And she said, a plane flew into it. And I always say, because I'm so smart, I said, you know, that happened once before. In 1930, a bomber flew into the Empire State Building, but it was really foggy and raining heavily that day. It's so crystal clear today. How can you not see that you're flying into the World Trade Center? And as soon as the words came out of my mouth, the second plane hit. And she turns to me and she says, did you see that or did I imagine it? And I ran back to my office. I said, guys, 2 planes just hit both towers of the World Trade Center. I think we're under attack. I think this is what Cofer was talking about in July. So everybody runs back up to the front of the office, and it was all downhill from there. So I go to Pakistan a couple of months later, and in March, we capture Abu Zubaydah. When we caught Abu Zubaydah, we also captured his diary. And in the diary, it was a fascinating, fascinating document. He was an accomplished artist. He would write poetry, letters to himself as a young man, like warning himself, treat our mother with respect, don't whistle at that girl in the village, stuff like that. But he also had the private cell phone numbers of 3 Saudi princes. So I wrote to headquarters. I said, be advised, I'm looking at Abu Zubaydah's, whatever this is, it appears to be a diary. And he's got the private cell phone numbers of these 3 Saudi princes. So we go to the Saudis and we said, we want these guys or we're going to start killing people, and some of them are going to be named Al Saud. Next thing you know, one of them goes in for bariatric surgery because they're all giant fat pigs. He goes into bariatric surgery and dies on the operating table. One is driving on the Riyadh to Jeddah highway and is killed in a 1-car accident. And the third one goes camping in the desert and dies of thirst. So they said, sorry, we really wanted to turn them over to you, but we can't now. That led me to believe, and subsequent revelations led me to believe, that the Saudis were involved. Plus the fact that the Saudi ambassador to the United States, Prince Bandar bin Sultan Al Saud, his wife wired $50,000 to the hijackers before the attacks. They've never answered for that, number one. Number two, we've all heard the stories of the dancing Israelis and the Israeli, whatever it is, 1836, however many it was, Israelis that were arrested after 9/11 and held for several weeks and then finally released, obviously Mossad agents. I do not believe that the Mossad was involved in the 9/11 attacks. What I believe is that the Mossad had infiltrated Al-Qaeda, knew that the attacks were coming, knew that they would likely be in New York, and purposely didn't tell us because they knew that our response would be that we would kill 2 million Muslims in the next 20 years, which is exactly what we did, and that benefited Israeli foreign policy.
John, I've heard you give this answer before. The first week of September that year, 2001, I was my first year in D.C. I was invited to a retreat that included White House staff, Senate leadership, and I was invited to give a speech on pop culture and abortion. That's what my speech was on. Tony Blankley gave a speech, who was the editor of the editorial page of the Washington Times. His speech said, this was 11 days before September 1st. He said, there's going to be a terrorist attack in this country that changes the trajectory of our nation. It's imminent, be prepared. And 11 days later was September. I've always thought, what did Tony Blankley know?
I can tell you, I can guess what he knew. George Tenet, who was the CIA director, and Dick Clark, who was the counterterrorism czar at the White House, were screaming from the rooftops, an attack is coming. And Condoleezza Rice, Dick Cheney, and George W. Bush say, you're wrong. The threat is from China. We have to prepare for war with China, not these Arabs who don't even have shoes. That's not where the danger is coming from. And they were wrong.
So when you see that look on Bush's face when he's reading to the kids, that look is so punctuated with meaning. You're like, what is he think? What he was thinking is I was wrong.
Oh boy, did I blow this one.
The look in his eyes.
You remember in the days after 9/11, just for a minute, some of the White House people said, this is Bill Clinton's fault. All the planning was from Bill Clinton's time. And they're like, no. This is an American failure.
Yeah.
Right? The State Department gave the hijackers visas. They were all here legally. The CIA couldn't stop them. FAA, there was no such thing as TSA. The FAA contracted out airport security. They didn't stop them. Right? The FBI knew they were in the country. They didn't stop them. It was a failure on all of our parts. Like truly an American failure. Congress didn't know what the heck was going on. We all failed.
And so Tony Blankley was they were leaking to the Times and other folks.
Help us out here, because the White House was reading the Times.
Here's at a retreat included White House staff, Senate leadership, and so he was saying, wake up.
That's exactly what that was. That was the CIA calling him and saying, look, the White House reads your paper. You've got to convey this message for us.
Okay.
Hey, John and Jason. Love you guys. Hey. I have a question on Zionism and how they got such a foothold in evangelicals, even the Catholic Church, Catholic schools, to be specific. A lot of them, I know you say Netanyahu doesn't do it for religious reasons, which I believe. I think it's for power. But what about these other people? How much of it is for money? How much is it for ideology? How much of it is religion?
I think you're better equipped to answer that than I am. You travel in those circles much more than I do.
Yeah, I think when I was in, for the inauguration, I didn't want to be in Washington, D.C. I wanted to be in Gaza. So I went to Jordan. Israel wouldn't let me into Gaza. So I thought, well, my friends are going to be celebrating with the president, and I had friends in the administration, and everyone was going to be there in their black ties. And I thought, no, I just want to be with the persecuted church. So I actually at the time, I was in the West Bank. And I was talking to Reverend Munther, who you may know. He's a Palestinian Christian leader, an evangelical Lutheran pastor. And so they were horrified at the prospects of, Ambassador Huckabee becoming ambassador to Israel. And at the time, I know Ambassador Huckabee. I've known him since 2007. I know his family. And I admired him. I'm an adult convert to Christianity and Catholicism. I say, the parable, the seed that falls on rocky soil, I'm afraid I'm the rocky soil. And so when I look at someone like a Mike Huckabee, I saw someone that I thought of as a kind, godly man. And I think so many people that have absorbed Christian, in fact, I was an executive producer on a film called Sing a Little Louder about a church. It's a true story of a church community in Germany when a train on its way, I think, to Sachsenhausen broke down in front of the church during Sunday services, and they were screaming for help. And the pastor said, sing a little louder. I worked on this film. Actually, I wrote the ending of this film, and Mike Huckabee would use it on his tours of the Holy Land and Auschwitz on the tour buses. I felt that although his theology, this heresy, I think Christian Zionism is apostasy, because if you don't see Jesus Christ as the fulfillment of all of the promises of Abraham, I don't see how you're a Christian in any orthodox understanding of what it means to be a Christian. But I felt that when Mike Huckabee had the intelligence reports, when he got to know the truth, he would react to what he was revealed to him. This Christmas, I was at the Church of the Nativity with two of my sons and my director of Middle East operations, and Mike Huckabee was right in front of us. I knew many members of his team, and we were talking, and Mike turned to his daughter and said to Sarah, what's all that commotion? She goes, Jason Jones is here. And then they both roll their eyes. So we talked to one of his delegates, someone on his team, who told us he was with them when they went into Gaza and witnessed starvation. He came back out and held a press conference saying he saw no evidence of hunger or starvation. So I don't know if I had a wrong assessment of the man, but generally I think of that generation, the closer you are to the Holocaust, and your fathers and uncles fought the Nazis, that they look at the lens of suffering in Gaza or in Israel through their generation's experience. And it just becomes too complex. The head of the Mossad just wrote something very sorrowful. The former head, from 2011 to 2017, he wrote that he was ashamed of being Jewish. When I read that, I thought of something, the greatest thinker of the 20th century, in my opinion, is the Jewish philosopher Hannah Arendt. This woman is, to all young people, you should study the life of Hannah Arendt. She was a genius. She was a student of Heidegger. She was his lover. Then he joins the Nazi Party. Then she's betrayed by her country, Germany, which she loved. She was betrayed by her lover, Heidegger, who was called the new Socrates. Then when she wrote a very nuanced and beautiful report on Eichmann in Jerusalem, the Mossad had plans to kill her. So she's betrayed by everyone she loved. In 1952, she was speaking in Berlin to college students, and one of the students said in a question and answer session like this, "I'm ashamed of being German." And Hannah Arendt said, that's really silly. You shouldn't be ashamed of being German. You should be very ashamed of being a human being. What I think is so hard for the boomers, as your generation likes to call us, is to know that we're all human beings. Jews are human beings, Palestinians are human beings, and we're human beings. We're looking for white hats. The Israelis don't have a white hat. The Palestinians don't have a white hat. We don't have a white hat. The world is very complex. And I just think it's this fear of acknowledging the reality of what is happening in Gaza or the West Bank will foment Jew hatred. And so they just can't bring themselves to acknowledge it. But I think it's the opposite. If we fail to acknowledge the suffering of the Palestinian people, this acceptance of collective punishment will eventually blow back on Israel. And so we have to resist collective punishment and collective guilt. And so for these boomers, it's heresy. I think it was a heresy cultivated by design. If you go to the National Religious Broadcasters Conference, you see more Israeli flags. You won't see an American flag, but you'll see Israeli flags everywhere. And why is this at a Religious Broadcasters Conference? I've asked my Christian Zionist friends, what do you hold to more strongly? Your commitment to Israel, your belief in the Trinity? And they will really quickly say their commitment to the state of Israel, which just strikes me as very odd. But that's because they've been propagandized in supporting the state of Israel, whereas there's not there's a $750 million was just signed into a Hasbara operation to the United States that Israel's committed. There's not a $750 million campaign to promote belief in the Trinity. But I do think, and we're working on a documentary to look at the difference of these generations, and I want to have empathy to the baby boomers. If you boil it down, I don't think there's really a difference. The baby boomers, they're looking at the horror of the Holocaust, and your generation is looking at the horror of Gaza. So both generations have real commitment to a brutalized, helpless population. And maybe when we can acknowledge that, that can unite us as a country, and we can see an end to the hell that the people of Lebanon, the West Bank, and Gaza are suffering.
And I think the censorship kind of creates the anti-Semitism, as you were saying, and that it makes way for a lot of hatred. And I think what a lot of people lack is charity on that side of it, the far right wing, especially the younger guys. So I wanted to give John an opportunity to talk about what you were telling me earlier about that in Greece, that story of the Zoki, what was it? The Zoki.
Oh, Zakynthos.
Yes.
Oh,
it's a
yeah.
Beautiful story, I think.
Oh,
that
right.
really helps that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zakynthos is a Greek island in the Ionian Sea. And I'll preface it by saying that that Greece lost a higher per capita percentage of its Jewish population than any other country in the world, even Poland, during World War II. So when the Nazis took Greece in late 1940, they sent a major to be the occupation governor of the island of Zakynthos. And his very first action was to call in the mayor of Zakynthos and the bishop, the Greek Orthodox bishop of Zakynthos, to his office. When they arrived, he said that he wanted, in the next 24 hours, a list of all Jews on the island and all of their addresses. The bishop and the mayor went back to the mayor's office to discuss what to do. And they decided 24 hours later to go back to the major's office, and they gave him this list, and the list was only their 2 names and their 2 addresses. And they said, we're the only Jews on this island. In the meantime, they had enlisted families all over the island to hide all of the Jews in caves, in stables and barns, and anywhere they could hide people. They hid every Jew on the island. The major responded, stop and think what you're doing. I'm going to have to kill both of you. And they repeated, there are no Jews on this island other than the 2 of us. There was evidence that I found at the Holocaust Museum in Washington that they had also written a letter addressed to Hitler that they gave to the major. But there's no evidence that the major ever sent it back to Berlin. The long and short of it is that the Germans withdrew in 1944, and Zakynthos was literally the only place in Greece that didn't lose one single Jew. Not one. They saved every one of them. The reason I was telling you this story is that my great-grandfather, my father's mother's father, was a chauffeur for a wealthy Greek Jewish man on the island of Rhodes. And when the Nazis came, they rounded up all the Jews. There were about 2,000 Jewish Rhodians. They were brought together in the medieval city in what is today called the Square of the Jewish Martyrs. The man that my great-grandfather worked for ran for his life and came to my great-grandparents' house. They lived in a little 3-room hut. They were very poor. And he asked if they would hide him. So they hid him. And they moved him from family member to family member to family member. And sometimes he would stay for weeks in, where they kept the pigs and this little piece of land that they had halfway up the mountain. But he survived. And my grandmother always said that when she was growing up, you didn't have any idea who was Jewish and who was not Jewish, and everybody just lived as brothers and sisters. It wasn't until the Germans came where they said, these ones are okay, these ones are not okay, we're rounding all of these up. Of the 2,000 Rhodian Jews that were taken from the island that day, they made their way by boat to Athens, train to Thessaloniki, and then another train took them directly to Auschwitz. So of the 2,000 that were taken, 14 survived and 7 returned to the island. But Zakynthos was the only place where they survived.
All right, guys, thank you for listening to that Q&A session with the great John Kiriakou. If you missed the original interview, don't forget to listen to that. It's in the show notes, or you can listen to that interview wherever you listen to the show. And this episode, as always, is being brought to you by the Vulnerable People Project, standing in solidarity with the most vulnerable communities in the world, Christians in Gaza, the West Bank, the ancient Christian communities in India, the communities in the Nuba Mountains of Sudan. We are there. We can only serve them with your help. In fact, no, you can only serve them with our help, because when you become a donor, you're the one that's really doing the work, and we're here to serve you. Go to vulnerablepeopleproject.com. Look at what we do. 64 parishes we're securing right now in Nigeria. We got to get to 100 by the end of the year. Our goal is 1,000 vulnerable parishes in Nigeria by the end of 2027, but we can only do it together, all right? vulnerablepeopleproject.com. Become a monthly donor, $2 a month, $200 a month, $2,000 a month. We are grateful for all of our donors. This is what allows us to grow the mission of serving the persecuted church. What a privilege it is to be a member of the mystical body of Christ. What a privilege it is to live in solidarity with our Christian brothers and sisters around the world. Join the team at vulnerablepeopleproject.com. Okay? Hope you're having a beautiful summer. Aloha.